Imagine like 40 horses coming into your yard, and then like my dad would be like, son, go knock on the door and invite him to church. And I'm like, what? And a grown man and a wife opens the door to 40 horses staring at them. And I'm like, hey, we're part of a church. After that, it was fishing. They sold all the horses. I'm like, Gideon, I made a connection.
Moving on, son.
They buy a boat.
We already reached the horse.
They buy
horse community
and fishing poles, and now they're fishermen.
Welcome to Life on Life Discipleship with Josiah Jones. This is a space where faith gets real. We're all about authentic discipleship, encouraging conversations and practical ways to live out your faith every day. No fluff, no cliches, just real talk about following Jesus and building others. Let's do this.
What's up, guys? I want to welcome y'all to another episode of Life on Life podcast. With me in the studio today is JD, John David Rodgers.
Yep.
This episode, I would love just to talk about this idea of the discipleship crisis in the church. But before we get going on that, what are you doing these days? What's going on in your life, in your world?
Yeah. So now, Jenna and I and our daughter, Ellery.
How old is she now?
She is 19 months.
Wow.
We live in Austin. So after leaving Watermark, taking a step back from ministry, kind of started to get more into the creative space, creative directing, just not for a church. And did that sometime in Dallas. And then we were exploring different opportunities. And along the way, it's kind of funny. I'll share this because I feel like it's relevant to this podcast. Basically had a crazy opportunity to go back into ministry. And, you know, on the outside, it was like, whoa, like this is the Joseph redemption story. Like this is what all my people are going to be like, there he is. Like this is crazy. And that would require us to move to Florida. Or there was an opportunity for us to move to a suburb of Austin, Texas. However, the difference was in this move to Austin, I was going to get to live streets away from all of my best friends from college and their families who know me the most. And if there's one thing I learned at my time in ministry, it was the cool opportunities are very short-lived, and the things that are really worth anything, like they're nothing without people, and they're nothing without being known. Everything we talked about last episode. And so I looked at the two opportunities and we chose our people. Like we chose to say no to this, and it was scary, but it was like, I'm going to choose that right now. What our family needs is to invest in relationships and be around people who have known me and walked with me for over a decade. And it has been incredible. Like that decision, it was the most amazing decision. So we live in Austin, literally the dream, like raising our kids with like some of my best friends, best man at my wedding. We're missing the Joneses. Hopefully they'll come, they'll bring Armada to Austin one day. But it's just been a dream. It's been amazing. So I work for, like you said, a men's apparel brand. It's called Burley Bow. We create lifestyle apparel for men that are athletes, outdoorsmen, and family men. And
I love it.
You're rocking it right now.
Man.
Rocking it right now. You can check it out at burleybow.com. It's been really fun. I'm the creative director there. Get to work with an awesome team, get to be surrounded by amazing men and women who are working really hard towards a common goal. It's very energizing.
Bro, you're crushing it.
It's been really, really fun.
You are crushing it.
Yeah, but what's really cool is I think my time in Dallas, it was a lot of like, I was defined a lot by what I did. It was like, you're the porch guy. It's like, oh, you're the porch guy everywhere. Oh,
yeah.
The bubble, the Dallas bubble is real. And in Austin, there's no one, it's nothing about what I do. I'm just always with people who know who I am. It's about who we are, the Rodgers. And it's just so cool. I feel like God has really just brought so much provision in relationship and community that we had felt like a lack in for a while. And so that's kind of
speaking on life discipleship. I feel like you're doing it with your community right then and there. I mean, they're in your life almost daily.
Oh yeah. We are definitely
cool.
on top of each other's lives and
Oh,
the
yeah.
kids, and really cool seeing Ellery just form friendships and already seeing like them as aunts and uncles and them taking her and playing with her and me with their kids. And it truly is life on life. Like anyone could show up at my house at any time, walk in, grab something. I could do the same. Hand-me-downs for days.
Yeah.
Like we're always together, eating together. We were all together last night in Austin, just staying up way too late. And it's really cool. Like something we do there, we do community, and we've always decided like we're never making a compromise of like the season of life we're in is never going to have us compromise community. I think that's something I got wrong a lot when I got married and we got pregnant. It was like community kind of became second, because it's like, well, we're learning how to be married or we're learning how to be parents, and everything was like community kind of suffered at the season of life. Well, imagine like anywhere from 20 to 40 married parents coming into a home every Thursday at 7:30, and we all put our kids down in closets, bathrooms, rooms all over this house. And so there's 27 kids right now, and
In one house.
in one house. We put them in pack and plays. Like, so picture me in this little closet. I'm setting up a pack and play. I'm setting up a sound machine. I'm getting a little cam ready. And then Ellery, of course, she's used to me in this nice glider at home. She's like, why are we in this musty closet every Thursday? She's so confused. I'm sweating like a mug, and it takes her a lot longer to go down, but eventually she passes out. I put her down. I, hope the door doesn't make it too loud. Like different homes have different, the creaky doors. Like I don't want to be in that closet. It's more creaky door than the other ones. And then everyone's kind of sneaking in. They start at 8 no matter what, the teaching, but you're kind of just sneaking in. You see people with like glazed over eyes because they've been in the sleep sound machine vortex. Yeah. But then eventually, usually around 9, everyone's there. And then, you just spend an hour getting your kids down. So we're going to use it for all it's worth. And so we're talking until 11, 12, and then you wake up all your kids, you pack up your cars, go home and put them down again.
That's wild to me.
It's crazy.
Even me, just loving life on life. I mean, this is so unorthodox.
It is surely. But when I read Acts, I'm like, oh yeah, that's like kind of, I bet that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
Like how could thousands have been multiplied by the day and there not be some kids taking naps like on the floor?
Sure.
That's for sure what was happening. We break bread. Everyone brings dinner after comes straight from work. It's chaos. I'm gonna be straight up. It is. Jenna and I got into like a huge fight this Thursday night at like 2 a.m. because Ellery she just woke up and she got pumped and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm surrounded by all these people and it's like midnight. So she didn't want to go back to sleep. And so you can imagine me, I'm like, it's been 3 hours of rocking her. And I go in and Jenna's like, this is why we should get a babysitter. And I'm like, no, we said we wouldn't compromise community and all.
Yeah.
It's like, and like all this stuff. And
the goal is for even the kids to see that this is what mom does. Not just, hey, here's the babysitter. We're going to go to community, but we're going to show, even when they're young, we're going to show them. Yeah.
We want everyone. I am everyone's Uncle JD. They're my kids. I care about them and their safety and everything like they're my own. And it truly is so unique. So much of culture today is so rushed and you can't rush this. That's the thing. You can't rush it.
People right now are saying, prove it. And I'm like, wait, y'all have a little something out there right now. You actually created an Instagram. It's called Modern Family.
Yes,
right?
The Modern Family.
Family.
Yep. Friends turn to family. Yep. And you can go see.
Yeah,
they're all on there.
Oh yeah, and it's real life.
It is, and it's hard, and it is very inconvenient. I'll be straight up about it. Like take all of us wanting to hang out and go out to dinner last night.
Yeah.
You're having to look at, you should see the hostess anytime we go to a restaurant. They're staring at like 16 adults and then 27 kids like pulling our hair and like running into the restaurant like it's their home. And they're like, you could tell they're like, we got to get this table quick. Like it's a packed Chewy's and they're like, we got to get this going. And by the time we leave, it looks like the Tasmanian devil. I mean, sugar packets are gold to these kids and they're everywhere. Crumbs. I feel so bad. We're all like trying our best. Like we're so sorry. Like, and it's chaos, but it's everything we wanted.
Yeah.
And there's no better feeling of all your friends' kids running up to you and saying Uncle JD, Aunt Jenna, and seeing my kid get excited to see her friends. And Imagine like you're walking down the street in your neighborhood and then suddenly you see your best friends walking down the street and suddenly you're all going to the same park. And now it's just the epitome of life on life. And I think in a different life, I would have chased the goals and I would have chased like the next achievement. And it's so crazy to see this switch in me that now the greatest achievement, I think, is like, besides obviously my relationship with Jesus, is this, like the gold, there's no salary, there's no opportunity, there's no stage that can replace this, like this life on life, like thing we are building.
Well, what I love, what you said this, and let me just kind of summarize. You were the porch guy, and now, now you're JD and you're fully known and fully loved. And I think there's 3 different images we can unpack this later, but it's the perceived image. That's the image where, that's how people see you. That's the perceived image is how people see you. The projected image is how you want people to see you. So you put, something out there that it might be real, it might not, but it's just how you want people to see you. And then the actual image is who you really are. And you can hide before others, but you can't hide before God.
With a third P.
I couldn't.
Projected, and actual.
I know. Can you come up with something?
Yeah, a pastor.
You got something on the spot? I know. I love alliterations too.
Perceived, projected, and it's
something for an actual image.
I'll think about it. I'm going to come back to it. Hopefully,
but you're not. You're living the actual image, and that's who you really are, and you can hide that before people. But you can never hide it before God. And when you really learn that, man, you can't hide it before God, so why would I hide it before people? That's the truth that people have to hang on to when it comes to this type of community. I want to be fully known. I want people to know who I really am.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And it's interesting, as I've gone through life, how much that has rearranged in terms of value. I don't care what people, how they perceive. Like, I mean, obviously I don't want people to perceive me in a way that would like bring some kind of like bad perception on my character or my family. I'm not talking about that, but like, I think I used to value like, how am I being perceived? And then I would say because I value that, well, then now I have to think a lot about how I project my image. And then what was on the bottom was the actual. And now I'm like, because I have the actual, I don't really value what if so-and-so thinks that I care too much about social media.
Right.
Which, I love. So I love social media. So
you do. And you're great at it.
Yeah. And I think for years, it was like the whole, I came right after like the whole social media debacle of like celebrity pastors, like the time that I was being asked to preach. So of course everyone's like, there he is. He wants to be
building his platform.
He wants to be Judah Smith and he wants to be Rich Wilkerson. And I'm like, if y'all only saw my face when I am in sermon run throughs, like this is so terrifying. And like, and
all the feedback you got.
Yeah. And you think about, oh my gosh, the comments, and I'm like, yeah, and it's
most people would run from that.
Well, it's just funny that so then what you do is you care about, like I said, perception. So then you're not even being who you are up there because you're like, well, I've got to project an image that will dictate the right perception, and then you lose who you actually are.
Yeah.
I was becoming what I wanted to be perceived versus just being who I was. And that's what I would say that God has done in this season, the last 3 years, is I have just become so sure of who God made me to be. And I really just, the voice of people's opinions, of man's approval, of the leadership above me, my boss, like those would have been majority of what consumed me. And now it's such a small part of what dictates who I am.
Yep.
And God has really just like shown me, here's who you are. Here's who I've called you to be. Here's who you're not. And the result is getting just to be.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
And that's no knock on feedback and accountability and the things that we all love.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you're getting feedback, it can lead to you wanting to perform a certain way for that person.
Oh yeah. Especially when you don't know them.
Yeah. And they don't know you?
Yeah. You were like, I'll show you. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, you could get 14 people saying something nice, and then there's one person that's like, this guy seems like so-and-so, and then, or seems like whatever. And I'm like, oh, I'll show you, kind of thing. And so all of this to me, what it back to my community and being actually who I am and what we're creating and trying to create with our friend group, it pertains a lot to what we're talking about in this episode. And it actually reminds me a lot of my upbringing. Mm-hmm. So
let's go there.
Yeah. I
want you to share kind of your discipleship journey along the way.
Yeah. I'll share that, and then we can talk about the discipleship crisis that we see and why we think there's such a lack of discipleship today. So it's 1993. I'm born, and I am born in Good Shepherd Hospital.
10 years later than me.
Actually, I was born in Longview Regional in East Texas, and the 903. And I am a product of two East Texas rednecks, my mom and my dad, Chris and Susan, and they met they did not know Jesus. No one really, I don't think, was following Jesus up until this point in my family history. They met, I think my mom was like 21. She was like old enough to get into this like club. My dad had a fake ID, danced the night away with my mom. She assumed he was at least 21 because he was in the club. He wasn't. She's like, but when she, he's like, they probably did some stuff that night, if I'm being honest, and knowing them. And he was like, by the way, I'm 19, and she's like, oh my gosh. And she's like, well, I'm already in love with you, so let's get married. And they got married, I guess, in the living room of my grandma's house. And, a year later comes me. And when I was 7, everything changed. My dad was on the 5th floor of the Harris Casino in Las Vegas. He was blacking out from drunkenness, and he had turned it basically into his alcoholic father, who left him when he was a boy with his 2 brothers, left him, his 2 brothers, and his mom. And he had become the man that he had hated so much. He stands up on the railing, about to jump off the 5th floor of this casino and commit suicide. And he was basically drunk, crying out to just the loud Las Vegas. And he was like, no one loves me. He didn't know who he was talking to. He's like, you never loved me. And then he said that in a moment, all of Las Vegas went completely quiet, and he became sober in an instant.
Wow.
And he heard audibly the voice of God. And I don't remember exactly what he said, but I think it was like, I love you, like come home, or something like that. And he fell back onto the balcony, and his brother came up and was like, what is going on with you? And he's like, I don't know, but I know that everything's about to change. He came home, he drove down the street, the closest Baptist church that he had passed 100 times. It was a small New Hopewell Baptist church. And he walked into like the pastor's office was like a joined portable building, with like the one AC unit thing. He bangs on the door, and he's like, I need to bleep talk to somebody about this bleeping thing that just happened, And then the pastor, sweet man, Brother Davies, he sits him down, and he starts to disciple my dad.
Wow.
And he leads my dad to Christ. And in a moment, everything, the drugs, the alcohol, the pornography, the women, everything like changed. I remember my dad like being abusive with my mom to praying before meals, and he would start crying, just like blessing the raviolis or something. I'm like, what is happening to this man? Because he was a brawler. He has a huge scar on the back of his head from like a pool stick being broken over the back of his head from a huge bar fight he started. Like, he was that type of guy. My mom didn't like it at first. She leaves. They separate. He thinks he lost her. She eventually hits her rock bottom, comes back. They renew their vows at this New Hopewell Baptist church. And in years, he started a nonprofit in Africa. He becomes the youth pastor of the church. And then all of these bar fighting rednecks are like, well, Jesus must be real if Chris Rodgers believes in him.
That's amazing.
I know Chris Rodgers, so God must be real. If Chris Rodgers isn't drinking anymore, smoking anymore, cussing anymore, dipping anymore, God must be real. So they all came to his church, and they all got saved, all became deacons, all this stuff. And I remember my home was like never just our family, ever. It was always like he found a guy who could play guitar, and they would come over, and these men and their wives who had just found Jesus, really, the time where you're just really sensitive to everything you're learning about Jesus, like everything makes you cry. I mean, I'm about to cry right now. I'm still, I never want to leave that place, but picture all these tattooed, like burly men, just like in my home, like this little, lived in a double wide trailer on like 6 acres in the middle of nowhere. And we would have burn parties. I remember they would walk over and they would all bring their rated R DVDs and their bottles and their cigarettes, and they would burn them. And we probably look like we're practicing witchcraft now that I think about it, but it's just what I saw. And I saw it from the age of 7 all the way until my dad died when I was 21. And he never stopped. He never stopped. He had women who were abused and got pregnant. He would bring them in and they would stay until they had their baby, and he would put them in the next, like what they needed next to succeed. Homeless men. I remember one time I came home. I'm like, I hear the shower going in my shower, and our house isn't big, so you hear everything. And my mom's cooking something, and I'm like, I think she was cooking chow mein, like the stuff you make, like in the like ramen noodles almost. Yeah. And my brother walks by, and I'm like, wait, if my brother is right here, who's in my shower? And my brother goes, oh, it's a homeless guy named Gary. And I'm like, what? Wow. And my dad had picked up this homeless guy and said, come live with my family. First off, that's
dangerous.
Yeah. I am like, okay, looking back again.
Yeah.
But, and I remember like my dad, like they shaved his head and they shaved his face, and like he had just gotten out of prison, I think. And again, and I remember one time, like my brother and me had to share a room then because he needed to use the other room. I'll never forget, like we were so scared. We were like laying in bed, like, what is wrong with my dad? Like, I'm on the end of the house with Gary, this stranger. Like, he's over here and he has guns. Oh, like, gosh. I don't have guns. Yeah. And like, I'll never forget.
Lock the door.
Well, we had the door cracked and the hallway light was on. I'll never forget, my brother's like, are you seeing this? And like, we just see a silhouette like walking by the door crack. And I am like, oh my gosh, my dad brought this homeless man, and he's gonna like, I don't know. Why? I don't know.
Life is over.
Kill me, kidnap me. I don't know what I thought he was gonna do, but it ended up like helping him get back on his feet and getting him a car and all this stuff. And that was just normal. I remember he would take the men of the church, and they all would rally around a new hobby, and they would make it a ministry. So it'd be like, this isn't science. It's not like, It's not like some crazy system, and it's not elaborate. There was no social media about it, but they'd be like, let's get into, we have a lot of men in this small town who love horseback riding. So what do? My family become horseback riders. And so I got a horse, my brother got a horse, my dad got a horse. We had Shiloh, Gideon, Big Tex, Lightning, all these horses. And he's building a barn. I'm like, my dad's building a barn. And then he's buying a horse trailer. I'm wearing Wranglers. And
that's revolutionary stuff, bro.
Yeah. And now we're horse riding. And then get what they would do. All of them would do it. All of the deacons, all the men. So my dad would be like, all right, it's time for horseback evangelism. So imagine my house, just trucks of horse trailers are coming down the driveway, parking, and now you've got 30 horses and people on horseback, and we're trotting down my blacktop back roads. So the houses aren't on top of each other. So if people are coming into your yard, it's like weird. It's like, I didn't expect you. What are you doing? Imagine like 40 horses coming into your yard and like covering your front yard. And then like my dad would be like, son, go knock on the door and invite him to church. And I'm like, what? So I'm like walking up and like knocking on the door, and imagine like the awkward tension of like, I'm like 15, I'm awkward as it gets. Like, and a grown man and a wife opens the door to 40 horses staring at them. And I'm like, hey, we're part of a church. After that, it was fishing. They sold all the horses. I'm like, Gideon. I made a connection.
Moving on, son.
They buy a boat.
We already reached the horse.
They buy
horse community
and fishing poles, and now they're fishermen. So they're driving up to boats. You're trying to enjoy fishing, and now boats are all coming up to you, and it's like, hello, like I'm Chris, and Then it was hunt. It's just like
Yeah.
all of this stuff that would just go from thing to thing to thing, and people would come. That was the craziest part. Is we had so many people that all the men were having to stand on this little Baptist church, and then they had to buy land, and they had to build a bigger building, and it's still going to this day. And the guy, this is what's really cool. I'll wrap this part up. One of the guys that intersected my dad's life and came to know Christ, he ended up giving his life to Christ. My dad discipled him. My dad was the youth pastor, right? He then became the pastor. This guy became the youth pastor. At that time, I become a youth member. And then this guy has kids who are in nursery. So you have this generational picture of life on life discipleship of the pastor, the youth pastor, the pastor's son who's in youth being discipled by the youth pastor that my dad's discipling. And then you have this kid in nursery that's growing up, and I'm over at the youth pastor's house. I'm basically life on life with his kids. And to this day, they're married. And so what's so crazy is that guy, my dad's like, my son doesn't listen to me, but he'll listen to you. So that guy, I didn't know it at the time, but he's invited me to come. He on the side built homes, and he's asking me to come lay sod with him and drive around with him and rebuild these homes with him and hang out with his kids.
Wow.
And always over at his house, which what my dad did with him. And it's so crazy that when my dad got sick, I think my dad knew like he was raising up this guy to be a spiritual like leader to me. But praise God, my dad discipled him, because when my dad died, he was ready to be like a spiritual father to me. And like, because my dad like was life on life with this guy, I've always had a kindred, like, I feel like I'm with my dad a lot when I'm with him, because my dad discipled him.
Yeah.
So like when I'm with him, he just does things that I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I feel like I'm with my dad. Like
your dad gave him his life.
Yeah. And what a gift. Like what if my dad wasn't on mission in that way? And so it's so much bigger, like I think, that we think than just like a 1 hour coffee.
Yeah.
Like this concept. It's so much bigger. And not only did he become my spiritual father, but he's now the pastor of that church to this day.
Wow.
And
he did some of your wedding.
Yeah, he did my wedding.
Yeah.
He stood in as my dad at my wedding.
Yeah.
Like there's so much that he now does. But when my dad evangelized to him years ago, no one knew. And I think that's what we want to talk about is like, it's just so much, it's necessary. And it's so much bigger than I think we realize.
Yeah, it is.
That's a lot.
So that was so good though, because I think you're giving people a picture of what life on life discipleship can look like and maybe should look like. I mean, when you think about discipleship in the church, what comes to mind?
I believe that the church is God's plan A to be the means of discipleship. Right. That's why we're passionate about this conversation, because I don't think yes, Armada is doing that, but I also know part of Armada's mission is to point those men to be a part.
Yeah, let me say this. Every person that leads a discipleship group, one of the expectations is that they're committed to local church. They're a member of the church, a member of his body. You can't try to do it apart, in my opinion, apart from his church. That's right.
And so this isn't about, the church doesn't have it figured out, so let's figure it out through Armada, or let's figure it out through this podcast. That's not it.
No, we're partnering with the local church.
Oh yeah. And I think what I would say is what's happening is because the church is experiencing such rapid growth in terms of attendees. Also, like, we have more technology and we have more production value and all these things more available to the church than ever before. That stuff requires meetings, strategy, time, gifts, efforts to make all of that happen. All of the ministries now required, and all of the kids that come in, that you got to have people watching those kids and volunteers, and all of this takes so much meetings. And it's the heart, I think, is so in the right place. But I think why I wanted to start with that story of this small town church and movement of discipleship is because I think some of it has come at the cost of that of that reality.
That's right.
Like, because it takes so much time.
It does. And JD, what I love about you, people just need to know this if they don't already. I don't think they know this side of you. You love that side of the church. I mean, you love the creative arts. You're one of the most creative guys I know. Mm-hmm. And you're amazing on social media. You're the best marketer I know. Mm-hmm. And you want to help the church. And Watermark got so much better. The porch got so much better because of your creativity. And you leverage that really, really well. And you continue to do so to this day on your own platform and now with Burley Bow, and God's doing a work there.
Okay,
we'll talk about that somewhere.
I don't know how to respond to that. Keep going.
I want people to know that you're not pitting the two up against each other.
No.
You're wanting to marry the two.
I'm the guy that's like lights, camera, actions, baby. Exactly. I want more of it. I think that's awesome.
And what I love about the church today is it's gotten so much more creative.
Mm-hmm.
The excellence of it has gotten so much better. That's one of the things that turned me away from the church when I initially went as a young kid. I'm like, this is kind of boring.
Yeah.
You know?
Snooze fest.
Yeah, snooze fest. But the other side of you, and this is why I'm having you on this podcast, the other side of you bleeds life on life discipleship.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's just start quickly. Why do you think we don't do life on life discipleship in the way that we're talking? Why is it so programmatic, systematized? You know, we think that discipleship is a Bible study and it is. There's merit to that.
Yeah.
Or just a teaching. Why is life on life getting lost right now?
I don't know. I just don't want anyone to ever think that I am speaking from a place of I have it figured out.
We're not.
And this is what they should do. I think literally mine is like just observation and just communicating some things I've observed. And it's like,
And some experience.
Yeah.
You have experience. And we're inviting people along for the journey. Like, we haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
But there's some things that we want to talk about.
Yeah. If you look back at like the church's history, just since I've been alive, there was, 89.5 KVNE. You have like Christian, Focus on the Family.
94.9 KLTY.
Chris Tomlin, who's slaying How Great Is Our God. And then things start to slowly evolve where I think that was around the same time as like the evangelical movement and an attractional, what do they call it? Like the attractional
model.
Yeah, attractional model.
Seeker friendly.
Like these churches were pioneering kind of like the like we can do this just as great as like culture.
Yeah, I don't have to go to a concert by Chris Tomlin to see the arts.
Yeah.
We can bring the arts to the church every Sunday.
Really talented people were in the church and they brought those talents to the church. And it benefited in so many ways. And it was all from this place of like, we want anyone to feel like they can come here and be entertained, belong, be related to, enjoy.
Have fun.
They don't want it to be a snooze fest.
Right.
Like, we are changing the view of church.
That's right.
I think in that effort, they now have gotten so good at it that it has required so many systems, so many hires, so many meetings to be now this bar, this standard, that it has come with so much resources, time, energy, that how can I have time for this kind of life on life discipleship? Yeah. I've got meetings on meetings. So hopefully people in the body are making disciples. That's what happened to me. I know that.
I was about to go there.
Yeah.
I mean, and it led to burnout.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
1000%. It's so crazy when you feel like, well, I'm in all of these meetings. So the volunteers, like, if I don't have this meeting and if I don't do this thing, then the volunteers can't show up and like meet people down front because like everything else has to run for them to have that space.
Yeah.
But I love meeting people down front. Like, do you remember the days where like we would be at the porch until like 1 a.m. and I'd be like, dude, I love it. I got to meet with a guy I met down front. I'm going to meet him at 5:30 a.m. for coffee tomorrow because that's the only time he can meet. Yeah. And it was like, that was my attempt. I think I knew like, you got to do this.
Yeah.
But
you were max.
I was exhausted.
Yeah.
It wasn't just part of my like healthy routine of life. It was like, here's everything that this role requires. And then I hope to like fit in some of things that I love outside of the job. Like we used to joke like, man, if I'm going to actually disciple people, it's got to be outside 9 to 5.
Yeah.
But I worked for a church. Like it's got to be early in the morning, late at night. Well, who's not pumped when I'm out late at night discipling guys and crying and having vulnerable sessions? My wife. Like my wife ain't pumped about that because she's like, you've been with these people all day and now you're telling me you need to go every night and do a Bible study and this. And it's like, well then, okay, I got to spend more time with my wife. She's upset about that. So then that means I got to meet with them. And it was just like, I just found myself where the thing that, like I said, was the heartbeat of ministry was just slowly fading over and over and over. But I think where I was deceived is it was in the name of, we are doing things that are going to help a lot of people. Like we're going to bring in a lot of people and they're going to have a great time in this hour service because I'm planning down to the minute all of these things.
To be clear, it wasn't the fact that you couldn't disciple outside of work, and that's most of the time what we have to do as ministers of the gospel and what lay people have to do as ministers
My
of the
life
gospel.
now.
But you were working 50, 55, sometimes 60 hours trying to stay up with the machine of everything we just talked about, and the ministry started closing in on you.
Yes, but I will say that the difference, because we're kind of talking like to the church.
Yeah.
Like, because you're absolutely right. I don't have an excuse to not make disciples right now because I don't work at a church.
Right. Let's make that clear.
And it's got to be the inconvenient Thursday nights and the Bible study. I do a Bible study with my church guys, my small group, every Wednesday morning. And like that stuff, it requires outside of my 9 to 5.
Right. Still working 45, 50 hours at Burley Bow.
But to the ministry person, your work, I will say, is not more hard or anything, but where it's different is it is spiritual in nature. And so there is an effect on the soul that I think that it has, that it does require a certain specific type of care that you have to be mindful of.
Yeah.
Because all day you are doing things that are everyone's a part of a spiritual war, but if I'm going to attack something really heavily, really strong as Satan, I'm going to go for his church. I'm going to go for the staff of that church. I'm going to create more and more burnout, more and more leaders, moral failures. I'm going to pile that on to create more narratives of why you can't trust the bride of Christ. Like that's what I'm going to do. And I think that specifically to those people that are working so many hours in ministry and the things that you love, the heartbeat of ministry are getting pushed further and further down the list. That's what I'm saying is like, you got to be careful of, but also that those things don't become your identity. So I think that's the second problem that I had was I could never turn off Pastor Porch JD. Like I always felt like I was existing in that way. In one reality, you are called to a higher standard. In one way, you are. But I remember just always walking to any place in Dallas feeling like, are people looking at me right now of like, well, is that a Mambo taxi at Mi Cocina? And yes, it was. And I'm sorry, okay, if that caused you to stumble.
But there's freedom in Christ.
Sure, whatever. My point is like, that is how, so then when I would go home, like even I would be like thinking about like, does my wife see me as like this amazing pastor? Does she think like, does she like, I know who you really are because I see you at home. Like
fake.
Yeah. Like you were mean, you know, like that's just how it was just so intertwined.
No, I agree. It's weightier. And you can say that on this side.
Yeah.
Cause you're working for Men's Apparel, Burley Bow, and you just got out of the church life not long ago. Yeah. And even when I was coaching baseball, there's a different weight.
Oh yeah.
But I don't want to.
Nice.
You've got some levity today.
Yeah, it's nice.
But I don't want to pit vocational, non-vocational up against each other. There's different stress.
Same mission.
That's right.
Everything's just in its own ways. It's just its own ways.
Yeah, let me summarize it with this. If your heart isn't getting attached to discipleship, then we're going to start using words like, I'm just in a season. I'm burnt out. Remember you saying that the other day when we were talking. Because your heart got further and further away from discipleship.
Yeah.
And you're working within the church.
Yeah.
And it started getting what? You fill in the blank.
Well, yeah, that's why I'm to take it back macro again. like that's kind of what I'm saying is I feel like I'm speaking from not just like an observation, actually, just from a personal experience, like you said, of if your week is more about, like, I'll get really granular with mine. That's like this transition from song 1 to song 2 needs to feel like this. I need the cymbals to swell this way. I want sound. I want you guys to bring it up, and then I want you to bring it down whenever I say this. It's like you just get so, that takes a lot of time. It just takes so much time and reps. And like that's what I mean is like, I got so into that mode. I'm an achiever by nature. I'm very like, I get very detailed, and I get very like, ooh, that was excellent. And that was epic. And that felt how I wanted to feel. And that was almost became my drive. Like that was what I was chasing. But what I needed was to be in like everything I just talked about, like what my dad, like people in the home, people in my life, like time for people, like life on life, you know? So,
well, in summary, I think you're saying if you get distant from discipleship, then you're going to get distant from the ministry. The ministry that's supposed to give you life.
Yeah. I mean, if we're not making disciples, like as a church, if we're not, I don't know, like what are we?
But we can call discipleship a lot of different things. I think that's where this is another hindrance, if you will. We can call greeting someone at the door discipleship, parking cars discipleship, making sure the transitions are good discipleship.
No.
I'm just telling you, that's the world that we can live in.
Yeah.
When you're
I see what you're saying.
on staff of a church, and it's got to go beyond that.
Well, I think that is exactly what Satan wants you to think.
Yeah.
I think that is the game that he's playing. Is I come here, I put on my volunteer tag, I do the wand thing in the parking lot,
or I'm on staff at this church.
I put it up, and then I go back to my life, and then I come to my 1 hour Bible study, and then, it's all just in its own little, because we love to do that as a culture these days. That's another thing we used to always joke about with Dallas. What's so different in Austin, not all of Austin, but the Austin culture versus the Dallas culture, at least what I have experienced is so different, is I feel like in Austin, people take their shoes off. They stay a while. They're looking in my fridge. And of course, these are like some of my best friends, but like they're enjoying the time. We don't got to be anywhere. Let's enjoy it. Let's put the kids down. The other night, we went to dinner with some friends. The plan was just to go to dinner. And they said, what are y'all doing after this? It's like 9 p.m. I'm like, I gotta put, my child is literally going crazy. And I'm like, putting her down. She's like, well, just in case like the vibes were good, we wanted to keep hanging. We brought all of our pack and plays. We brought all of our stuff. And of course I was like, yes. So impromptu, they come over, they put their kids in our guest room. They put the baby down in the pack and play. We hung out till 2 a.m. on like a random night. And that is such a lost art. Why do we think that is? Like, I want to hear from you. Because our joke in Dallas I was like, Lord have mercy. If I want to hang out with Billy Bob, I got to put it on his calendar 2 months in advance. It's going to be a working lunch. He's got to get back to work. And the whole time he's going to be checking his Apple Watch, and he's going to be getting texts the whole time. And I'm going to be like, this was it's such a formality. Like you did it to like, Christians do life together, so let me.
Why do we not engage in life on life discipleship?
Yeah, and like, why aren't people just like, I don't know, like, is that just an East Texas thing? Like, why aren't people like kicking open my door and being like popping on my couch and like, what are we doing? Like,
man,
and some personalities, I want to say last thing, hear that and they're like, that sounds like my worst nightmare. Like, do not come to my house unannounced, and
that's okay for that person in some way.
Like, is that just an us thing? Or is that
like our personality?
What is the difference between a personality trait and a biblical, like what we think is like a call, like life on life? Like, it's different.
What I want to be I love the question. I want to be careful that we're not prescribing the way we do it on everybody.
Yeah.
So it's not prescriptive. It's like descriptive is another way of saying it. JD, there's a lot of different reasons I believe we don't do life on life discipleship. One of them is we live in an individualistic culture. It's my time, my schedule, my money. You know what I'm talking about when I say individualistic culture, right? like individualism.
Yeah, like
Everything's mine. We don't do well sharing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do well sharing our time. We don't do well sharing our finances. We don't do well sharing our life. And I think the sharing of life, there's a bunch of reasons. I know for Kathy and I, she's more of a private person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, here it is,
right,
public.
We're both actually. It's funny. We're both married. Jenna, like, she enjoys being with people.
Yeah.
She more so wants to be with her people.
That's right.
Like, that's what fills her up. Me, I'm like, everyone all the time. Like, who? Nice to meet you. You want to come over? Like, that's me.
You are.
Yeah. And she's like, who's in my house?
Yeah.
Like, what are they doing here?
Which is wild because I think what you said about the homeless person in your
If
house,
I brought home a homeless person to my wife, like my dad did to me,
Jenna's staying at a hotel.
she's gone.
She's gone.
I'm
She's out.
gone.
Yeah.
It's done. It's done. She's saying that is, I can't look past that. I look past a lot of things. That's the one. I'm
Right.
like, you're putting my life in jeopardy. No, it is different. I do want to say, like, I think I wasn't expecting to say this, but I do think there is some personality that plays into the how you should disciple and how you should operate in life on life. I don't think what we're saying is everyone should 24/7 have a, we are open sign.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what should happen.
We're not staying up till 2 a.m. with people. I'm sorry. I'm an early riser, and I am. What?
It's because you can't stay up past. You go put your kids down,
and I fall asleep on the couch.
every time.
Yeah.
No, not on the couch. You fall asleep putting them down.
True.
Every single time. It makes me so mad.
But if it's not that, it's the case.
This man would invite us over, okay, and say, "Come hang out on." Come hang out with me and Kathy. And we're like, great. Like, we'll come over. So we load up. We come over. Next thing you know, Kathy, I'm going to go, Kathy, this one's for you. Then he wouldn't tell his wife. So imagine you are invited over and I'd walk in and Kathy would be like, JD.
Y'all are family.
Tell your wife. So she'd be like, JD, Jenna. And she's cooking, not for +2. And she's like, y'all are here. And you could tell she's like going to the pantry, like, what do I have? And I'm like, he didn't tell you again, did he? And she's like, no, but obviously, like, welcome. And I could tell, I'm like, they're going to talk later. And then you would go put the kids down and not even hang because you're asleep. You would be asleep for 2 hours and now your sweet wife is like, y'all want to watch TV? Like, she doesn't know what to do. Because you just invited us over and then fell asleep. So
there's some truth to that. I've gotten better. I've gotten asking for permission.
Hey, life on life.
Yeah.
It's real life, whatever.
Well, no, I think it takes time, man. And we just don't want to give that time away. Or it's like me and my family, and we're going to have our thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. We have a lot of good traditions in our family. But we've made a commitment to disciple this way. I think that's where it has to start. And you got to see that, hey, when people come over, they're going to see the mess. And I don't know if people want to, and there's a physical mess, and there's also even just a spiritual mess.
Chaos.
Chaos?
Yeah.
Like I'm not the dad that I thought people would see me as, right? The projected image.
Oh yeah, your kids don't give a crap about your perception.
No.
They don't care one bit.
Or what you're trying to project.
We're at a restaurant and I'm like, obviously you're like, when people think you're a good parent, your kid doesn't care. She is screaming and everyone's staring. And of course, it's again, personalities. Jenna's like, we got to get out of here. And I'm like, we got to pay. And she's like, no, we got to go. Like, Donna ditched this thing. And I'm like, no, like I don't care what people think, and she's just screaming the whole time. So I agree.
And I think that's why we're married to who we're married to.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if they would do it without, us. And
I think she kind of likes it.
I know Kathy does.
Yeah.
Deep down, it's been a stretch for her, but we made a commitment. And there's things that Kathy offers me that I would never do without her personality and her giftings. But we made a commitment early on when we were dating that our house was going to be open to people. Not that we were living together before we got married. Let me clear that up. I'm talking about when we were dating, we would talk about these things.
No one in the chat thought that.
Just
not one
sure.
person.
That's my insecurity.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure that again, First Thessalonians 2:8 is lived out. It's not just some aspirational verse that they loved him so much that they not only shared the gospel with them, but they shared their very own life. And then we've defined discipleship. I don't know how you would define it, but here's what we've defined for my family and I, and now it's all the way made it into Armada.
He would have like a family.
I got to, man.
That's why
Because
the family discipleship motto. I don't have one.
The decisions that we make about discipleship are filtered through this definition of discipleship. And so I'm just going to say it just so everyone can have a clear definition. And again, I'm not saying that this has to be for everybody, but there has to, I mean, it's backed up with scripture, so you wrestle with it. We define discipleship as radical self-donation for the purpose of godliness and multiplication. So radical self-donation comes from 1 Thess 2:8. Not going to repeat that verse again because I've said it a lot, but it's got to be the transfer of life from one man or one woman to another.
Okay.
For what purpose? I'm not just spending time with you. I'm spending time with you so that you would be more godly, that you would be more holy for godliness. 1 Peter 1:16, be holy for I am holy. And then multiplication, that I'm spending time with a group of men every week for the purpose of them not just coming to a Bible study and consuming, but for them to come and, we're going to have formal times. We get in God's word and we talk about theology and doctrine, but I'm going to add more men to my meetings. I'm not going to add more meetings to my week. I'm going to add more men to my meetings for the purpose of life on life. And for the purpose of them multiplying their life when they're done with me for a year. I mean, they're going to be done at some point. That's the purpose of discipleship, that it will multiply. 2 Timothy 2:2, the things you've heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, and trust the faithful men who will be able to teach others also. And so a Bible study doesn't really multiply, but a discipleship group, it multiplies. And that's the difference between a Bible study and a discipleship group. And so we've made a decision to live our life, no matter if we're vocational ministry, full-time or bivocational. We get our calendar out every Sunday evening, and we just say, okay, I know you love I know you're rolling your eyes on structure.
That's amazing.
Some of it's reactive and other
it's
times
amazing.
Proactive.
I'm commending
giving people handles because they're like, how do I do this?
Yes, keep going.
I'm not the JD that's just going to open his house at 9 p.m. and stay up with people till 2 a.m. We just look and say, who could we already add to what we're doing? And so even this morning, before I got here in the studio, I was inviting a guy to my little girl's soccer game. Well, we flexed because got a email saying that the soccer game was canceled due to weather and whatever. And I just said, hey, still come over. We'll do soccer practice in the backyard and we'll eat breakfast together and just jump into what we're already doing. And it wasn't like I was adding more meetings to my week. I was just saying, hey, come live life with us. And we're looking at our calendar every week and saying, I'm working out at 5:30, jump in. Going to this speaking engagement, jump in. The kids have gymnastics or soccer, jump in. I'm going to this grocery store, jump in. And that's just how we've always lived our life. My wife, Kathy, she had a girl show up at 6 a.m. once a week, and they would drink coffee for about 45 minutes to an hour, and then the kids would wake up, and she would help with the bedtime, or not the bedtime, the morning routine. And she got to watch her, as the kids get out of bed, make breakfast. But she wasn't just watching, she was jumping in doing it.
Yeah.
This generation has to unlearn what they've learned. They haven't seen a functional family, a lot of them, operate in a functional, or better yet said, a godly way, a godly manner when it comes to just everyday life.
Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah. And so we have this discipleship crisis because we've made excuses, and then we've called discipleship something that really I don't see in Scripture. I mean, when you look at Jesus and study the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, when he said, hey, come and follow me, he was inviting them into his life. It wasn't just come and follow me to the temple while I teach and then go home. No, come and follow me as I'm walking from one place to another. And you're going to witness healings. You're going to witness me sharing, the gospel, the kingdom of God. You're going to witness so many things that are caught, not taught.
I'm almost jealous too of the moments that disciples got with Jesus that weren't recorded.
Yeah.
Like that weren't the awesome spiritual moments, like just broing out around a fire, laughing. So I love watching The Chosen because I feel like they do a good job of kind of creatively creating moments that would have probably happened between, because he was a human and he was fun and he was great. And so it's like, and so just in watching the different personalities, and like I think that's so much of what discipleship is too, is I think we do see a crisis because it's like so transactional and so come in, do the chapter, do the thing, pray request anyone. Guys are kind of looking at each other. It's quiet for a while. The leader's speaking the most for sure. And then you're heading out and you're like, check again. And I think that also it's just so much, there's a lot of fun in it too. And riding around and enjoying different, like going to soccer games and doing these little fun moments that are so much part of it too. And again, I think the biggest enemy is time. Mm-hmm. So my question is, as we can start to wrap this one up.
Here's what I want to say. Can I say one more thing? As I'm discipling these men, or as Kathy's discipling these women, you know who they're also discipling? Me.
Yeah.
I mean, they're discipling me. They're discipling my kids. Now, I'm still king when I come home. Little king. Little K king. Jesus is big K king. But there's going to come a day when they're going to need a second, third, fourth voice.
Yeah, like my story at the beginning.
Yeah.
My dad and...
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so they're seeing grown men, grown women walking out their faith. I mean, the guy that came over this morning was reading the Bible to my 4-year-old. I'm just like, this is amazing. Mm-hmm. You know, this is incredible, seeing him pour out into my kids, and they're benefiting. They love it. Mm-hmm. And so we just embrace the mess, man. Mm-hmm. I mean, Kathy and I even had conflict this morning. It's not like I'm mad at you. We just disagree right now. And he got to experience some of that. I just said, hey, babe, we're going to talk about that later. Right? And I think we're ashamed sometimes of our mess. And I'm telling you, your mess can be one of the greatest messages that people ever hear.
To wrap it up, I don't want to just be the people that are like, there's a problem and it's time. And
yeah.
Like if you are a young pastor or someone in the church listening to this, like, because I do think that they are doing the best they can. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, you're trying right now. How do you create a way for hundreds, if not thousands of people to all effectively be discipled as a part of the local body?
Practically, like, right now?
Well, I'm saying that's what the question they're asking. Right. It's a hard thing to solve for. It's not like it's just, so yeah, all of you open up your homes more. See ya. You got to give an account. You got to know how they're being discipled. You got to know how they're being taught. There is a system that has to, when you start talking about the church's responsibility, I do think there is a system that has to become a play, or you just don't know how people are being trained up.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it's not really about changing the system per se. It's maybe just about the training, like how we're teaching people to disciple in those groups and the things that you are curating as the church. And how, so I do think churches do such a good job of like attend us, be a part, be plugged in, be a part of the small group. Like, but then once they get together, do they know how to then cross over into this type of relationship? That's what I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you have to ask yourself, do we just have life stage discipleship? You know, and sometimes that can work. I mean, I think I'm at a church that has the best community model in the nation. I think Watermark, that's still our home church, love it. It has great community, but it's still life stage community.
Yeah.
And so
when you say that, you mean people in your same life stage are pouring into one another.
Yeah. And so one of the things I saw was you got all these guys who are in their 20s, or let's just say 30s, in a group, and maybe they just came to Christ, or they've only been following Jesus for 2 or 3 years. That group will only be as strong as the strongest guy. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think those groups are really good for accountability. Mm-hmm. For me to be able to come and build close relationships with my peers.
Vulnerability.
Yeah. James 5:16, confess your sin one to another, pray for one another so you may be healed. But when it comes to discipleship, I just don't think we can call that, I mean, that's a part of discipleship, but that's not full discipleship. Mm-hmm. A community group is not, especially even, I've been in community with the same men for 5 years. Do they help disciple me? Absolutely. But is it leading to multiplication? No, we've been together for 5 years. There's no call for me to go multiply that group per se. Mm-hmm. Now I'm multiplying my life, but there's no call to multiply that group. And then I feel for the groups that don't have like strong men that have been following Jesus for years. And so how do you integrate, the question I would be asking some of the churches is, how do you integrate the older generation, the men that have been following Jesus for a while, women that have been following Jesus for a while? How do you integrate that into those types of groups and create discipleship relationships out of? That's what we're doing with Armada.
Yeah.
right? It's an intergenerational approach because we just can't have a bunch of groups, coming together when they're only 2-3 years into the faith.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to be helpful.
Yeah.
When it comes to discipleship. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is. So I think just if you are, let's say you don't work at a church and you are a part of these groups, I think like the call to action for anyone, any believer, that one, I just ask the question, are you a part of the crisis? Like, are you someone who is being discipled? Is there someone in your life who has gone before you and is exemplifying the ways of Christ for you to imitate?
Yeah.
Like, you got to start there. If not, you need to find that. And our hope would be that the solution to that first step is your local church.
That's right.
That you can go there and say, I'm lacking in this way. Can you help me get connected to someone who can walk with me? And then if you're someone older and you need to ask yourself, are you discipling? Is there someone who is following you? You're inviting into your home for dinner, that you are letting them play with your kids and get to know your kids, and making time, both parties making time and space and intentionality for the other. And then my encouragement to the church would be that you keep creating the space and the push.
That's right.
For that to happen, but it's got to make sure that it happens in your life, as a staff member too. Like,
that's right.
You got to make sure that you are living that reality out yourself as well.
Yeah. Again, I think if I'm on staff with the church right now, or I'm leading a discipleship ministry at a church, or I'm over that for the department of that church, I'm literally asking myself, how can I find the faithful men who have been following Jesus for years, faithful women that have been following Jesus for years, and how do I connect them organically into discipleship relationships? Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to size and scale this right now. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen small, and the churches that are, quote unquote mega churches, thousands of people coming, start somewhere. You don't have to have this huge call where everybody in the church can come and be discipled, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's other means for that you already created with your systems and with your programs, and keep going, right?
Yeah.
But we're all itching for more. I mean, that's what this generation is. They're wanting a mentor. They've never had that before in the church. And so how could you create what we're talking about today? I think you got to just find a small sample size of the people that have been following Jesus for a while. And then, word of mouth will travel as you start talking to people in your congregation about discipleship. Oh, I would love that. I mean, that's how Armada started.
Yeah.
Candidly.
It's about, I think people today are just, we can wrap up. I think they're looking to go deeper, smaller, where so long I think people wanted to be a part of something wider and like cooler.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, look at all these people. I think now people aren't as seeking of that. They want I want a few that really know me and I go deep with.
Yeah.
It's like we're coming back almost to like Acts 2. Mm-hmm. We're coming back to small and traditional almost, and like the simple ways. And it's awesome. I think it's awesome that people are starting to like really want that.
Yeah, so. I agree. Well, that's a wrap. Life on Life. We'll see y'all next week.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Life on Life. If this spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, tag a friend, and keep the conversation going. Discipleship isn't a program, it's a lifestyle. So go live it out, love people well, and let's make Jesus known.